I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit bpn.fm to discover more.
Hello, I'm Rob Madge, and welcome to the Theatre Podcast with Alan Seals.
Today's guest is Rob Madge, who took childhood imagination to a whole new level, turning living room musicals, hand-sewn costumes from Grandma, and a deep love for Mary Poppins into a viral sensation that became a critically acclaimed solo show. When by critically, I mean Olivier Award nominated. What started as a way to honor their family's support during lockdown became My Son's a Queer, But What Can You Do? A hilarious, moving, and utterly original production that's now making its U.S. debut at the New York City Center. The conversation goes deep. We talk about VHS tapes turned activism, the surprising generational allyship that helped shape their journey, and even how comedy can be a radical act of joy and reclamation. Rob's journey is incredible. I can't wait to share this with you. Make sure to find me online on all the social medias, and make sure to catch the show at New York City Center. It's only running for 4 days right after this episode drops, so you got a short chance to check it out. And now everyone, please enjoy this episode with Rob Madge.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Today's guest has been seen in West End productions of Mary Poppins, Les Mis, and Oliver, who in addition to being an actor is also a writer and storyteller whose childhood VHS tapes became the blueprint for a heartfelt, hilarious, and critically acclaimed solo show called My Son's a Queer, But What Can You Do? The show puts them into the spotlight, blending personal history with theatrical spectacle in a way only they could. From parading around as Mary Poppins to rewriting what it meant to be yourself on stage, they've turned their living room into a revolution and brought the audience along with them. After a sold-out Olivier Award-nominated West End run, the show is now making its long-awaited U.S. debut with a special limited engagement at New York City Center this June 12th through 15th. Rob Madge, welcome to the Theatre Podcast.
I don't think I've ever heard the title said with such enthusiasm before. I must only ever call it My Son's a Queer, But What Can You Do?
But what can you do?
From now on.
I mean, that's kind of how I read it. That's my own interpretation. I hope that's how you wrote it.
Absolutely. All things should be open to audience interpretation, and I love that interpretation of it. Yeah, great.
Well,
fun.
your one person show. My Son's a Queer, But What Can You Do?
There you go.
Yeah, you always have to do the extra high
tenor. I'm not sure I'm perfectly warm.
It's finally coming to New York after the sold out run. The show is your life story, but the episode of this podcast goes back and dives deep into your life. So I think we're going to have a little meta interview here because you're going to tell us about the show while you're telling us about your life. But let's start with your young life.
Spoilers from the show from this podcast. Yeah, I used to always put on shows as a kid, as I'm sure a lot of us used to do if we ended up in theatre. It was my favourite thing to do. Other kids would run out and do sports at lunchtimes at school, and I would stay in the classroom and pretend to be Brandy as Cinderella singing my own little corner. That was my pastime. So yeah, and then I just fell in love with theatre and performing at the age of about 4 years old onwards, really. Never anything else I wanted to do.
4 years old, fell in love with theatre. In what part of the world? Well, I won't make assumptions.
In a tiny little village in the middle of the United Kingdom, near Birmingham, city called Birmingham. It's
Birmingham.
Yes, and then I made the getaway to London at the age of 9 to do Mary Poppins, which was wild because I was not used to the big bright lights of a city. It's very rural where I grew up, and I was the only flamboyant little monster running around.
Well, okay, so 4 years old, you were running around, and I know that at some point your grandmother became a big part of this journey that you've had into discovering your own identity and writing your show and getting on theater. So if she has a play in this question, bring her into the answer. But from 4 to 9, between deciding you love theater and making your West End debut, what was that path?
I think I just the living room shows outgrew themselves and I needed to channel them somewhere else. I think I got to the age of 8 and asked for a smoke machine for my birthday. And
I thought you were going to say ask for a smoke.
I asked for a cigarette. Yeah.
Hey, grandma. I need to do Mary Poppins.
Like a jaded old actress already. Like, oh, God, 8 shows a week. So my parents found this community theatre group called Stagecoach, which is still a big thing in the UK. Every Saturday, wannabe Broadway superstars get together and they channel their inner divas. And from there, that somebody said they had these open auditions going for London, Mary Poppins in London, and that was like a mythical place to me at the time. I'd never been, so I went along, dragged my mum, and then got the job. But my grandmother was really one of the most influential, I guess. She was sort of my little comrade, my little companion, who if I wanted a little princess dress, I would go to grandma with the sewing kit, because I would be too frightened to buy one myself or go to a store and get the belle dress. So I'd ask my little spy grandmother to secretly make me one. So she was amazing, and she really she gave me the confidence to go and try it out for real, I guess.
That's interesting that generation was the one, your grandmother's generation was the one to embrace I guess what we'll call a non-traditional sexual orientation or gender orientation, right? Because
I believe that we make a lot of excuses based on generational divides, and actually I feel it's not so much generations in my eyes. It's who you surround yourself with and where you've been brought up and the circles that you associate yourselves with, and we all get to a point where we have the choice to continue learning and continue growing, or we could say, no, I know everything now. And that's when problems occur, when we get outdated views, because somebody at some point in their life has said, I know the world now. Yeah. But the world grows beyond you. And my grandparents and my parents were just the most embracing of any new thoughts, any new ideas. Obviously, it took my parents some time to, use my correct pronouns. But they gave it a good go, and they do it correctly. They're brilliant people, but they never sort of close the door to, that's silly. No, that's not how the world works. Well, it is. It's in front of you, and you have the option to listen and respond to the world around you. And my grandparents always did that. So, I know plenty of people who are younger than me who aren't as accepting as my 94-year-old grandmother was. It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's the circle of friends. It's what you're taught about how to learn.
Exactly. It's also a matter of privilege, I feel, as well, to be to know how to accept one another, because I'm very lucky to have, grown up with queer theory at university, and access to education is so important.
Say queer theory?
Yeah, queer theory.
Was it a study?
It was part of my English literature degree. You pick certain modules, and I did a whole course on.
Oh, that's neat.
On queer theory in 2014, and so now when people are saying you can't say queer, I said, well, I was using that academically in 2014. So, but like I say, I'm very lucky to have had that education, and I think that's why education is so important and should be, compulsory, that people learn about our queer history, because it shouldn't just be reserved for those who can go to university. We should all have access to that information. Yeah.
And I think especially it's intelligent. It's a good choice on your part to call the show My Son's a Queer, to use that word, because it normalizes it. It normalizes all of this language.
Yeah, I like you say that. My intent is always to demystify the fear surrounding the word. I specifically want that word and the image underneath to be me looking as joyful as I possibly could. And that juxtaposition I find really interesting. That word that's used to often shame and subjugate us can actually be repurposed as a joyful, celebratory word.
Well, I think it's kind of... Is it the modern day gay? Because decades ago, look at all these old songs like I'm happy and gay. That was right. That was a thing that everybody said. It didn't mean anything other than just joyful. Yeah, and I understand that it's a triggering term for people who have been subject to abuse based on that word. And my argument is also that for me growing up, gay was the slur. If people said you are, that's so gay, as a pejorative, as a derogatory statement. So I just want to take back ownership of things that have been, taught to go against us. Well, they can work for us, actually, and we can be proud of it. All right, so then let's stay in Little Rob land, because before you get to Mary Poppins, before you get to the West End, you're putting on shows in your living room.
I am, yes.
And they were recorded on, and at least at some point, either recorded on or transferred to VHS.
Yes.
Because that's
VHS
included
tape.
as part of the show.
Yes.
Right? So what shows were you putting on as a kid?
So you had your classic Disneys, you had your Beauty and the Beast, your Little Mermaids, which had full projection mapping. I made a whole set design on probably the equivalent of iMovie. What was it at the time? Windows Movie Maker.
Oh, gosh.
In the early 2000s.
Paint Shop Pro.
Yeah. And a bubble machine and all the works. Mary Poppins.
I guess for the smoke machine when you were 8.
Yes. But one I don't talk about in My Sons Are Queer. I did a full-length musical of Desperate Housewives, which I'm very proud of. Yeah. So it was quite niche, but it was a jukebox, and it had the music of Legally Blonde and Sister Act. And basically what was popular in 2010, all those musicals, I think Eva Longoria's character sang Fabulous Baby or something. And Lynette Scarvo sang Hard Knock Life from Annie, as you can imagine, with how many children that poor woman had. Yes, that was a fun show. My dad played all the husbands and I played all the wives.
I was going to ask if you were the one person doing all the characters.
Yeah.
Like you brought in your dad, were friends part of this?
Oh, absolutely
peer
not.
groups? No.
No way in hell. They would have outshone me. No, it was very much I play all the roles and dad is stage manager and plays the blokes because I wanted to wear the wigs. And my mum was the camera operator. And my grandmother was usually the captive audience member. Emphasis on captives. She had no choice but to watch those performances.
So you had a supportive closed let's just say home life, I guess.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
And then because you had the grandma and then your mom and dad and everyone was supporting you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, did you bring it home or I guess do that at home? Because I know that you talk about being bullied in the show as well a little bit. So like, did you realize that you couldn't take your full self out into the real world for a time?
Yeah, I remember when we first did the show and I had friends from school come and watch it and they said, we never knew you were doing that at the weekend. As though I was like Batman living a double life. But it's true, I don't think I would have shown off my aerial wig in the playground at school. I think, yeah, you instinctively know that you are kind of different in that regard because you don't see another example. So I always felt very odd and unique in probably in a negative sense. I was like, oh God, I wish I liked football, but I simply didn't. That's why I think it's really important to have visibility for younger kids, especially, who are navigating the world and trying to see a reflection of, because there was nothing like that for me, and it was only about nearly 30 years ago now. But even so, we've come so forward so quickly. People now have shows like Drag Race to look up to, and so many examples, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. But we never had that a couple of decades ago. So yeah, I certainly felt very different.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what was I watching the other day? It was like Ace Ventura or something. It was an old I'll call it a classic movie, right? And then being a transsexual, being trans was the punchline.
Yeah. Punching bag. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a punching bag. Like being gay was a punching line. Like it's a story point. And I remember, I think it was, Adam Driver and Kerry Russell. I forget the name of the play. It was a couple years ago. It was probably like 7 or 8, right? Like pretty recent, where I believe it was Brandon Uranowitz's character was gay, but it wasn't the plot point. And and I was talking to him about it. He said it's the first time ever he's played a gay character when it wasn't. It was just is. It just wasn't part of the story in any particular thing.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I want to show with this as well. That thing that was, I felt so odd and strange, but it was happening. We've always been here, and we just do exist, unfortunately, to those that don't want us to, and we always have done, and we're not going anywhere. 20 years ago I was playing Ariel in my front room, and it's not a new trendy thing for kids to be expressive. When people say, oh, we are, it never used to be like this, bad influences on well, I was very happily, I just was, and I didn't know I was queer, for want of a better term. I didn't know what my sexuality was or my gender at that point. I just was enjoying life the way I wanted to. It was just a fact.
Well, I've got an almost 9-year-old and a 10-and-a-half-year-old, two boys who, when they were toddlers, babies, they would put on whatever shoes they could and whatever. They just wanted to be like mom and dad, so they put on her dresses or they put on her high heels. And like, I've got so many pictures of, especially my little one, just like clomping around on my wife's with my wife's high heels on. And it occurred to me in those moments, right? Like shame and, I guess shame, that kind of stuff is taught. It's a learned behavior. Because completely. At that moment, I had the opportunity to say, boys don't wear those shoes. Those only for girls, right? But instead, I pulled out my phone and started taking video because I thought it was the cutest thing.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage them to like express whoever they want to be. And like you said, little kids want to express. They're always imagining. They're always dreaming up things. And I think it's up to parents and adults and the people around them to make sure they don't hurt themselves.
Yeah.
To an extent. I think you need to hurt yourself to learn where your guardrails are. But yeah, when it comes to this kind of stuff, this is all completely made up, taught behavior.
Absolutely.
To who and what should or shouldn't be something.
Yeah, in full agreement. And I believe that you just have to let them discover who they are. When you want to replicate yourself in, again, I'm not a parent, I don't know why I'm speaking for parents here, but all I know is that my parents, I'm so far removed from them, but we love each other dearly, but they're not theatrical, but they just rolled with it. They rolled with the punches, they rolled with the costume changes, and they rolled with the smoke machines, and they never questioned it, and we had a laugh. That's the crucial thing. I had such a laugh-filled childhood. It was chaos, and it was crazy, and it was stupid and ridiculous, but my God, we smiled through it. Because they just embraced it, and they went, why not?
Why not? Yeah. And that's everything. I mean,
yeah.
You watch documentaries or like even on this podcast, right? I've talked to so many people who are just where they are because they never saw themselves doing anything else.
Yeah.
And it can kind of go either way. It's having obstacles put in front of you by society, by parents, by peers, and saying, I'm going to overcome those because I need to be who I am. Or the blissful ignorance of just being shoved down this path.
Yes.
Because no one ever told you that there should be any resistance. And as an adult, realizing that, oh my gosh, other people had it way harder than I did.
Well, that's the thing as well. And I think a lot of it boils down to love and wanting to protect. But what I've learned is that even with the most supportive family in the world, there will always be naysayers, and there will always be somebody who tries to dull your shine. That's a fact of life, unfortunately, because everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but we don't exist as opinions. That's what you have to teach yourself. You don't exist as somebody's opinion. You just are. You be you, and you'll flourish. And if you have that support, it makes the naysayers water off a duck's back. Because I was loved from such an early age and supported and accepted. Yeah, when I grow up, you are going to meet people who don't agree that non-binary is a lived experience. But I know that my parents think it is, and I know that I am. So it makes it far easier to navigate the world.
Right.
So I think if you're trying to protect your kids and trying to, let them know how scary the world can be, don't you do that for them. You be their lifeline when the world does that to them. You don't need to replicate that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, the world is going to do it.
Yeah,
There's
world will
no
do that.
getting around that.
And all you will do in loving and supporting wholeheartedly is you'll speed up the process of their self-actualization. You'll speed up the process of them loving themselves. Because I believe that even if you are unsupported from an early age, you will find your tribe and you will love yours. It will just take so much longer, and you'll waste so much time, and you'll make poor choices as a result. So loving your kids from day one, that will just make everything quicker, everything easier. It will make life simpler. That's what I believe. It will decomplicate a very complicated, divisive world.
Right.
It can be so simple.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. West End, Mary Poppins. You said you're 9. You moved to London for this. Was that, I'm going to say it is. It must have been a giant culture shift, life shift, paradigm shift when all of a sudden you find peers that support you.
I know. I was very disappointed. I thought I was so unique and individual. It's like, damn, big fish, small pond syndrome. Well, Mary Poppins is slap bang was the Prince Edward Theatre, slap bang in the middle of Old Compton Street, which, if you don't know, is the equivalent of the West Village. It's Soho in the West End. It is the queerest hotspot of London, of the country, probably. And I remember turning up for like my first rehearsal, and you'd see drag queens having a cigarette outside the stage door, just walking up and down the street, and it was just mind-blowing to me. I remember it being so colourful. I remember thinking, God, it's so bright and so dazzling. But I not once thought that, oh my gosh, there are scary gay people here. That's not what I thought. I just thought, wow, it's so colourful and beautiful and bright. That's what kids think. You know, when people say that drag queens shouldn't read stories to children, these kids aren't thinking about a drag queen when it comes to LGBTQ+. They're just seeing colour and magic. And
they like costumes. They watch people shove their hands up puppets and make their mouth move, and people inside giant yellow bird costumes.
It's theatre. It's just razzmatazz, razzle dazzle, which kids love. That's all it is, and that's all I remember. But it was such a great introduction to the world. But my gosh, it was really great to then. I mean, I was in the show with Scarlett Strallen was my Mary Poppins, and Gavin Creel was my Bert. I was very, very blessed and very lucky for that to be my first introduction into this business. You know, they really looked after me and supported me and made me feel so accepted again, but on a much wider scale. I thought, there's so many of us. Where were we all? That's what I think now, you know, when I look back and I go, God, I felt so alone as a kid putting on these shows and like secretly writing my Desperate Housewives musical and secretly playing Whitney Houston as the fairy godmother and singing Impossible in the classroom, you know. But there were so many of us in pockets across the world. We just needed to come together. Mm-hmm. And that's what theatre does. I think that's why we all love it so much, because it's all these misfits that have found their tribe. All those kids on their own singing Rodgers and Hammerstein are now singing it as a choir, as a chorus. Yeah. And that's why it's a beautiful industry.
Yeah, I love that term. It's I guess the unhomed misfits find their home.
Yeah.
With everybody else, because it's a place where everybody can come together, and like you have so much feeling that the only thing you can do is burst into song and dance. Uh-huh. That's the only thing left to do. Words don't work enough anymore.
Exactly.
And so at what point then in your teen development did you decide to start like writing something on your own that would turn into this professional one-person show?
I think for me, it was always the joy of creating. I don't think it was so much solely inhabiting a role and becoming somebody else. And it was never that for me. It was always, what is the show going to look like? How many costumes will I require? It was always like, I loved putting on the show, not so much just singing part of your world. I liked envisioning it and how is the smoke machine going to go here, and where are the bubbles going to fall? And I loved making programs and making the tickets, and it was everything about the backstage stuff. So writing came like kind of naturally to me. And my dad's a hilarious man, and he's always very good at observational comedy. So we'd like write little things together. I remember is how we first started. We wrote a pilot for a sitcom which we sent to the BBC when I was like 12, and it got quite far, and we got a lovely letter back saying, listen, this made like the final round, just so you know.
Wow.
We should write again. Me and my John Madge should write a sitcom again. And they just said that was so great. I think my dad would have been a brilliant comic, and he still could. Why not? So I learned a lot from him and how he would observe people. And then, comedy writing just fell into place. And then I went to university when I was 18 and I did an English literature. What do you do with a BA in English? They have an EQ song. Mm-hmm. Go into theatre again. I always try to streamline that course as much as possible. You could, pick and choose what books you would study, and I would always pick the plays and the Shakespeare and analyse those. So, that's my happy place writing. And it's so satisfying when you know that something that you have created is getting the laughs and the response.
Yeah. Do you? I guess through your teens, you're performing, right? And like, how did school play into this? And you said obviously, like, you studied queer theology, right?
Queer
theory in college. So you went to university.
Yeah.
So I guess what was that decision process leading up into your late teens, early 20s? And then, because it sounds like you could have directed, you could have done screenwriting, you could have been a production manager, a stage manager, but you've kind of rolled it all into one thing.
Yeah, it's strange. I'm just greedy. I can't sit still. I got to the age of about 16, and I'd done Mary Poppins, Oliver Les Mis, and I just felt that. And I went to a stage school. So from the age of about 11 to 16, I went to called Silver Young Theatre School, and I absolutely loved it. But I did feel that I hadn't seen much of the rest of the world. I got to a point where I just felt like, oh, I want to make sure that this is 100% correct. Did I just fall into this at the age of 9 and I've stayed stuck because there was nothing else to do? I just wanted to make sure. And then when I was at university, like I say, I was just streamlining everything to be theatre related. So it just reassured me that actually this was the right choice for me. This was the right path. And I'm so glad I went to uni and just saw, I think it really informs your work in performing and in writing, because to have a good, overview of humanity in all its guises, I think is very important. So I'm glad I did that.
Well, did you travel around or like to leave London at that point? So like when you say you need to go experience other cultures, other people, other things, what did you do to bring that into your life?
I stayed in the UK, so I didn't experience that much. But I went to Warwick University, and all walks of life go there, and it was fabulous. And some of my closest friends now don't do theatre whatsoever, but we have so much in common. And I think that's also, kind of important. Mm-hmm. So important to have your tribe and, your people that totally understand you inside and out, but also so vital to experience the world for everything that it's got to offer. We're such a bubble.
So then my son's a queer, but what can you do?
What can you do?
What did you do to make that happen on the West End?
Gosh, that was, everything just sort of happened as a result of a previous thing. It was never the intention to get it to London or here, I was thrilled to be here, thrilled that it was on the West End, but I really wrote it during lockdown in 2020 as a hobby, to give me something to do, and also because I was living back with my parents for the first time since I was little, and I found all these VHS tapes, and I thought, I would like to, for the sake of my brain, to put it all into like a nicely packaged product. I can say, this is how brilliant you were, Grandma, this is how amazing you are, Dad and Mum, like just for them really. And I remember I wrote it and I gave them the script and they read it and they went, this is so lovely, thank you. I wanted to channel it productively, my love for them. Weirdly, I just suddenly, I felt like I'd taken them for granted, and all of a sudden I was 25 or something and found these VHS tapes of, how amazing they always have been. And I just thought, God, I was so lucky and blessed. So I just wrote it as a passion project. And then we got it on in an off West End theatre in 2021 to an audience of about 40 or something like that. And there was also COVID times where you had to have perspex screens in between seats and everyone had to wear masks, which was hard for comedy.
Yeah,
so you're at 50% capacity, and then it took off at the Edinburgh Fringe. So but each thing happened as a result of somebody watching a version of it and going, oh, we should now take it here. Oh, okay, so then we'll go to Edinburgh. And then Nymax, Nika Burns from Right, came to watch it at the Fringe and said, oh, we should take this to the Garrick Theatre in London. Did it in the Garrick Theatre. Then ATG came to watch it and said, oh, we have a slot at the Ambassadors Theatre next January. So then we went there. So everything kind of just happens as a domino effect. And I've always just nodded and gone, sure, yes, why not?
The first domino, though, you said, we just put it up on off West End. But like, that's a big step. That's the big domino to knock down first.
Yeah, well, and we were really lucky to have assembled the creative team that we have during that time, because everybody was out of work and there's no way I could ever get some of those people. And I remember Luke Shepherd's our director, the director of Anne Juliet, and Just for One Day, and there's soon to be Paddington, smash hit musical that's going to take the West End by storm. So the fact that we got people like him and is just phenomenal. But we were all just out of work theatre people looking for something to do. So you send out a few messages, you go, do you want to give this a go? They go, yeah, why not? And then it just blew up beyond anything we could ever have imagined.
Well, okay, let's back up even further then. You wrote the script because you were at home with your parents, wanted to give something to your parents and your grandmother.
Yeah.
And when did you say like, there's something here? Why not just go write a Little Mermaid parody or something else that would float your boat?
It was really a product of the videos that I would post online. I would share some of these home videos, which I thought were quite funny. And I just wanted to entertain people in the past and show my parents off, like, look how funny they were and how brilliant they are. And then I received one comment from a parent who said, I've got a beautiful little boy who used to be a little girl. And once we came out to his friends' parents, our community and our neighbourhood has kind of turned their backs on us. Mm. And I thought that was so insane that my silly video of me just playing dress up with my dad could engender such a response like that. I thought, oh, there's a bigger story to tell here. It's not just, haha, look how funny and outrageous these living room shows were. Aren't they silly and camp? It's like, it can be, my parents can be role models in a way. And of course, they don't consider themselves that. They get on with it. They're so salt of the earth, British, sarcastic. What the hell, we aren't role model, you know?
Yeah.
But they really are. They're kind of like, and the theatre community has just embraced them. It's hilarious. Whenever they go anywhere, I fall by the wayside. They are the stars of the moment, and rightfully so. So I wanted to do something that answered that commenter's question of, she essentially said, what do I do? How do we navigate this? My son's queer, but what can you do? There's not much you can do. You just got to roll with it.
Oh, so I love that. All right, so the title is really like answering this one comment.
Well, I guess so.
I mean, yeah.
Unintentionally. I mean, it's...
yeah, not on purpose, but it's like for the world. When they see this, they're like, well, my son's a queer. What can you do?
Yeah, and I don't have the answer really to that. All I know is that my parents just embraced me and we got on with it. But really the title in its most simplest of format, and this is how I thought it up, it's a parody of a line from Les Mis. So I wrote the show initially with a very, very niche fan base in mind that knew that I played Gavroche in the Les Miserables 25th anniversary concert. So I thought, it'd be nice if the title could sort of do a nod to me being Gavroche once upon a time. And Thénardier has a line. He goes, this one's a queer, but what can you do?
Right.
And it always gets a giggle. Right. Here comes a prince, there goes a Jew. This one's a queer, but what can you do? And I thought, my son's a queer, but what can you do? All it is a pastiche of that famous lyric. And then, of course, you put it in big pink letters, and suddenly you can't say the word queer. I said, well, it's been in Les Mis since 1985, actually.
Well, it's been in Cole Porter for longer than that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, all this stuff. Like I was saying, the language goes back 50, 60, 70 years.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah. Anyway. But so it starts to go one domino after another. And are you refining? Are you changing? Or is it just like,
Constant.
Yeah, constantly?
This morning.
Really?
This morning. It never stops. And even when we do the show, it's never completely locked, because the audience in a solo show will become the other characters. And they will provide new lines every single day. And then they always give me something to play off of. So I have to always apologize to all the hardworking team that, listen, it is going to continue to evolve, but that's okay. Obviously, cues have to remain the same. I will never stress people out that much, but there might be the odd joke or gag that shifts every now and then. And I think it should always evolve. And I think if you're not adapting to what an audience is responding to, what's the point in having them? You know, it's a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
And
you're talking to them.
Exactly. And I never understand when people are so precious about their work to the point where the audience just isn't getting it, but they wrote it this way, so this is how it will be. No, we must listen to them. We must engage with them. Otherwise, it may as well be a film.
Right. And if you're in it for any sort of commercial success, you have to engage with them, because they have to want to tell their friends. I mean, that's the business of show business.
Completely, yeah.
While still being true to who you are, who you want to write, or who you want to write to be, right? So,
and of course, the show is so now, its whole premise feels so much more urgent than it was in 2021 when we first put it on. In the space of 4 years, it feels like the political upheaval has been crazy in those 4 years. So what was terrible. A simpler, happier show, it's still that, but there feels like there's more potency, there's more relevancy than ever before to tell this story. So it's constantly evolving and growing in that way. So even though some of the lyrics might not have changed, the way they're delivered and the way they probably, the way they hit the audience probably have a totally different response now. You know?
And you're I heard you were saying earlier that you're in Sitzpro. You have Sitzpro tonight?
Yeah.
So with full orchestra and everything. So you haven't done it in New York in front of an audience yet?
No.
So I know that New York and American English audiences are somewhat different.
Yes.
Have you changed any of the show, the lyrics, the lines for different regions wherever you're performing?
Yes. There are some niche references that just have to go. And it's been funny trying to find things that we share in common, because I wouldn't ever say that in the UK, I'd say we went to Tesco's. You don't have Tesco's.
Nope.
But then I'm not going to say that we went to Walmart because we don't have Walmart. So it's finding things that we both understand and share in common that garner the same response, That's just an example. But there were plenty of moments that I thought this won't quite work. And this moment that probably didn't work over in the UK will really work here. So, yeah. And we'll see, the first show probably will be different to the second show. And we'll see what people respond to.
So when you finally went live on the West End, your big house, full audience, and everything is going super well. What was some of the strangest and / coolest reactions from the audience that you had?
I always knew that people that liked theatre would probably have a good time, and they'd have a giggle, and they'd understand the references to Audra McDonald, and they'll laugh at my joke about Six, the musical. But my favourite responses have been the dads that have been dragged by their wives or their daughters or their theatrical children who would never in a million years dream of seeing a show with the word queer, but they've been, they've rolled their eyes, they've turned up, they're missing the football for this, And then by the end of it, seeing how it's moved them and the conversations I have with them after the show is really special. And I think that's the most rewarding thing for me is changing people's minds. And I hope, I hope the title doesn't put people off for that reason, because I promise that you'll have a good time, even if you would never in a million years dream of seeing a show with the word queer in it. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, the next question, the answer can be both, but the question is, ultimately in the audience, who is this for? People who need to find their identity, or the parents of people who need to find their identity?
All of us.
Yeah.
All of us. It becomes so universal by the end, which I know is such a cliche thing to say, but I think by the end of it, just come and watch, I think it goes beyond sexuality, gender identity. There's fundamentally, on a literal level, it will always be for the queer community and an acknowledgement that we are going to be okay, and we shall be okay, and we shall get through this together. Ultimately, that is the most important thing for me. On a wider level, we can't be preaching to the choir. We have to be educating people. And I use comedy for that. I think comedy is such a good way of enticing people in, and then you pull the rug. So I just think theatre in general is such a powerful form of activism when done correctly, because it's unexpected, and it's to entertain and also educate, I think, can be really powerful. So hopefully there's something in it for everybody. Without I'm not standing on no pedestal, and it's still very funny, and it's still a theatrical experience. It's still a camp old play with songs. But hopefully you'll get something a bit deeper out of it. Yeah,
I think that's the best kind of comedy, when you're with someone in the whole journey, you're with the show, the film, the whatever you're watching, and then at the end of it, like you said, get the rug pulled out. And that's a good way of putting it, because it's like, I'm in, you've got my attention, you've held me for 30 minutes, an hour and a half, and all of a sudden you flip it back and make us look at ourselves in a way that I'm like, oh shit. Like, you're right. I do need to look at that differently, whatever it is. And so I absolutely love this type of comedy, and I can't wait to see the show when it opens in like
I picked
3
it up
days.
Now, haven't I? You're like, what's this?
No. I mean, I heard so many good things. I heard, like, literally so many good things, and so much excitement for the show.
Yay.
So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. So I'm touching cabaret real quick, because it's a show now that has been running for a while. It's been huge in West End and here in New York. So is that something that you have to go to like a different place, a different Rob to pull that out?
Yeah, it's great to fully inhabit a role that isn't myself. It's been a long time of doing Rob. Even though that's still the Rob that you'll see in My Sons Are Queer is a far more heightened version of the Rob you're chatting to today. But to fully transform myself as the MC is just it's been a long time. I'm stretching the acting limbs again, which is great fun. But yeah, it's. I mean, again, that's a show that is. It's a timeless show, Cabaret. I mean, again, it feels far more urgent than ever before to be telling that kind of story. We're kind of at the same sort of. Yeah, we're at the same historical precipice. I feel 1929, Weimar Berlin, 2025. It's like that slow, gradual uprising, and shows like that are so needed, and people really need to heed its message.
Yeah.
So it feels very potent and very relevant to be doing that show right now, and it's heavy.
It is.
It's a heavy thing to put on 8 shows a week, 8 times a week, but it's an honor to do it. I think it's a masterpiece.
Well, do you prefer that kind of a role where it is heavy, it's 8 shows a week, it's intense, like physically and emotionally, and then even for your show, My Son's a Queer, you are the show, right? So when you're doing that 8 times a week, like
help.
So what do you do? What do you do to rejuvenate, to relax, to like get your energy back?
Got a great sense of humor. My Midland parents, who aren't theatrical at all, ground me. You know, they keep my feet firmly on the ground. We don't take it too seriously, and I think that's so important. You got to take your work really seriously, in moderation, and they've always taught me that, and I go back and see them a lot. You know, I live in London now. They don't live in London, but every chance I got, I go back to my roots, where no one's even heard of Cabaret. You know, I tell people in the local village pub that I'm playing the MC in Cabaret, and they haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, which is lovely.
Like, oh, you're a party host.
I know.
Yeah.
How do they not know that? Gosh. But it's really important, I think, because it can get so overwhelming, and it can get so all-consuming, that it's really great to have those avenues where it is so not anybody else's priority. And the world is a huge place. There are so many things going on in the world. People have so much crap going on that whenever we have, issues putting on shows and all that, it pales in comparison to what a lot of other people go through. So take it really seriously when you do it, but also know that it's a job. It's work, and you can shut the door on it and then unwind and then repeat.
Leave it at the office.
Yeah, I think it's important to do that, because otherwise it gets I get in my little head too much, The anxiety is overwhelming. Yeah, you got to have a giggle.
So now we're going to shift to one of my favorite closing games, Plot in 60 Seconds.
Oh gosh, okay. This is where I'm exposed for actually not knowing musical theatre at all. 8. 8
corresponds to... pull up my thing. Okay.
Oh, no.
All right. So 8 corresponds to The Sound of Music. Go!
The Sound of Music is about an icon who just likes to sing and dance a bit, but society tries to silence her and say, no, you must sit and pray. And she goes, no, girl, I'm going to go on the hills and I'm going to have a good old time. But then she meets a man, oh my God. And then she's like, actually, no, I'm not going to sing and dance. I'm going to be a mum, boring. But actually, no, she teaches these kids to play with puppets. Oh my God. She loves a marionette, and she teaches the kids to express themselves. She makes lederhosen out of curtains. What a woman. Drag on a dime. But then the Nazis come. It all gets very sad for the last 20 minutes. But then they escape and go on a mountain, and then there's some opera singing.
And the hills are alive.
And the hills are alive with The Sound of Music. I've got 20 seconds left.
That was 40 second. Very good plot. Very good plot. All right. So now we'll wrap up with the 3 standard closing questions. That was excellent, by the way.
Thank you so much.
First one simply is just what motivates you.
Laughter. I love to make people giggle. I love the sound of people laughing. I love it when somebody makes me laugh. That's how I navigate the world, with a good old sense of humour. And if we can laugh our way through the next tumultuous period of time, it's just the best medicine. Yeah.
All right. If you could give advice to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path, what would you say? I think the answer is I'd write a show about it. But, but what would you say?
Yes, keep all the VHS tapes. They're going to be lucrative one day. Don't let Dad throw any of them away. Make the most of your hair, because it's going to evade you very quickly. And and say thanks to your grandparents more often. And if you are lucky enough to be supported, know that that's quite rare and it shouldn't be rare. And yeah, have gratitude, and also know that they're as lucky as you are. You bring joy into their life.
Oh.
And I think that's we shouldn't feel fortunate to be loved unconditionally by our parents. I think it's I also have to train myself out of saying how lucky I am. I think it's a bad I think it puts pressure on an individual for something that they never that should be a given. You know, you're not lucky to be loved. You know, you are loved as it should be. And walk with pride with your head held high.
I love that. Okay, last question, hardest one. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want. Oh, you know what you're going to say. What would you see?
Death Becomes Her. Over and over and over again.
Oh, good. Current Broadway cast, I guess. Yes. The only Broadway cast.
Jennifer Smart, I just think it's such genius work. And any kind of show that embraces its theatricality. I love how it embraces its form. It doesn't pretend to be the film on stage. It is a musical, and they use all the tools. No spoilers if you haven't seen the show, but they use all the possible theatrical tools available to them.
And they don't try to hide it.
And they don't try and hide it, and it's all the better for it. Yeah. I think it's a brilliant piece of camp comedy.
So campy in the best way.
Yes, love it so much.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so where can we find you online, on social media, connect with you, go see the show?
I am Rob Madge on all platforms. Rob Madge 02 on Instagram, I believe, because I made it when I was Gavroche in The Lame is Rob 02 arena concert. And I can't change it, and it's so embarrassing.
I thought it meant like Rob Madge Oxygen 02.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as you live and breathe.
Yeah.
And the show My Sons Are Queer will be at New York City Centre from June the 12th to the 15th.
And then hopefully there's a life beyond that.
Listen, like I say,
the dominoes keep falling.
I always nod and say yes to that dominoes fall. Yeah.
That's right. Well, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, all the places. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going off of memory. I'm just there. Thanks to Jukebox the Ghost for the intro and outro music you are hearing right now under the episode. Rob, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure getting to meet you.
What a joy. Thank you so much.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.